There it is.
I am sure that over the tenure of our friendship, it has become abundantly clear that Japan holds a special place in my heart.
Now that I've been here, I get it.
You're crying.
It's windy.
Each time I visit, I return home with a new set of indelible memories, inspirations, and ideas.
Like nothing I've ever experienced.
And with its magnetism drawing me back time and time again, I like to think that at this point, my exploration of Japan could be described as enthusiastic, if not thorough. But just when I think I have a grasp, dare I say, familiarity of this country, it throws me a curveball. From the country's sprawling and iconic megalopolises to its quiet and bucolic onsen towns, you experience different sides of Japan's identity, character, and charm. But then there's a place far beyond the mainland and its influences, a place that has, at one time or another, always marched to the beat of a slightly different drum, a place of paradise with a dense and oftentimes dark history, a place that will reframe your idea of Japan completely. Okinawa. I want to introduce you to a couple of new travel companions. Meet the Bellroy Venture Ready Sling. Now, you'll notice this about my person in this episode and in every episode that we filmed since I got it. And no, not just because Bellroy is a partner, it's just that damn useful. I love this thing. It's perfect for travel when you need easy access to the essentials. It's compact, so it's not cumbersome to wear all day. It looks great, and it's got loads of thoughtfully designed pockets. Perfect for quick access to everything you need without weighing you down. But when the journey demands more, my other friend, the Bellroy Venture Duffel, steps in. This is a perfect companion for those extended trips with its tough, durable, water-resistant exterior and enough space for a long weekend's worth of clothes and all my tech gear. And I love how both products have this neat little Apple AirTag slip pocket for added peace of mind. The Venture Sling and Duffel complement each other perfectly, so I've teamed up with Bellroy to offer those two products as a set. And you can get 15% off that set by using the link in the description below. You can also get 10% off any other Bellroy product by using the additional link in the description. So go grab one of my sets and check out the fantastic line of Bellroy travel products while you're there. Okinawa. It's a place that conjures up very different images for very different reasons.
A bitter battle for Okinawa.
For a generation, it is and will only ever be the setting for some of the most brutal carnage in modern history.
Costliest of the Pacific War.
To others, it is paradise. Neither is wrong, neither is inaccurate. Both realities endure in an uneasy coexistence. And nowhere exemplifies that symbiosis quite like Naha, Okinawa's biggest city. Naha offers a somewhat jarring welcome to Okinawa. You step off the plane and you're hit with that sticky, warm air, saturated with the briny tang of the East China Sea. And looking around, you might feel a bit duped. I heard this place was totally different from mainland Japan. I heard it was more laid back, less like the rigid and hectic hives to the north. I thought this place was supposed to be paradise.
It feels industrial. It feels like a hard-working Japanese port city, and that's because it is. There is very little to differentiate this place from hundreds of other places just like it all over Japan. Dense traffic, packed izakayas, and there are konbinis everywhere. If it weren't for the palm trees and subtropical climate, a cynic might suggest we could be anywhere in Japan right now. But just under the surface lies a beguiling complexity. Naha, even with its obvious and not always charming patina, is not just another city in Japan. It's the gateway to that Okinawa experience that you've heard so much about. If you're looking for a point of comparison, if Tokyo is New York City, then Naha is Honolulu. Yes, they are both obviously different than their mainland counterparts. Yes, they are both the largest city in their regions. Yes, they are both subtropical. And yes, they both come with their own set of unique challenges. That much is obvious. But just like Honolulu is not representative of all of Hawaii, Naha is not representative of all of Okinawa. But that doesn't mean it's not worth exploring. There is lots going on here.
So now that you've reset your expectations, you understand that Naha is not everything Okinawa represents. I urge you to explore, wander, and see for yourself the uniqueness of this peculiar place. But make sure you're properly fueled first.
Pork tamago onigiri is incredibly popular in Okinawa. I mean, just look at it, why wouldn't it be? But the dish itself is fascinating. I mean, the egg has an umami flavor to it because it's dashimagi tamago, which means there's a dashi or broth used, and that dashi is made of sugar, salt, and soy sauce. So it adds a really wonderful, satisfying flavor to the egg itself. The composition is maki or dried seaweed, rice, that beautiful fluffy omelet, this huge fluffy omelet, and deep fried spam.
Spam, it just came to me right out of the blue.
Yes, spam. It's not as incongruous as it might sound. Spam has a very prominent place in the kitchen and heart of Okinawa. In the post-war years, when food was scarce, especially protein, spam was available through US rationing and through GIs. And because of its versatility and its shelf life, it became very popular very quickly. And Okinawans took this ingredient and incorporated it into their everyday cooking and also riffed on it and made these beautiful kind of fusion dishes, including this thing. So it yields beautiful dishes like this monstrosity. It's so good.
Pork tamago onigiri sits on a long list of foods with an Okinawan twist. And for good reason. Okinawa is an intriguing blend of influences. Chinese, Southeast Asian, Japanese of course, and Western, all simmered together over centuries. For over 400 years, Okinawa was part of a kingdom, more or less independent of Japan, the Ryukyu Kingdom. And unlike its isolationist guardian, Ryukyu was far more open-minded, willing to look outside itself for trade, influence, and ideas. So as you move around Naha and the greater Okinawa region, you can see those influences, old and new, start to emerge. Some with more complex provenance than others. Through a series of complex historical consequences, there are approximately 26,000 US military personnel stationed in Okinawa. This represents about 70% of all US military presence in Japan, despite Okinawa constituting only 0.6% of the country's land area. Put that many Americans on a small island, mainly young, mostly male Americans, many of whom have never left their hometowns, let alone the country, and it tends to change a place. Not always for the best, as is evident in Naha. But sometimes, a green shoot emerges from otherwise infertile soil.
I must admit, when I first stumbled across this dish on a menu, I gave it a little bit of an eye roll. I mean, on the face of it, it's ridiculous and could be very easily dismissed as a pastiche of misinterpreted Americana that somehow found its way onto a diner menu in rural Okinawa. But in reality, the story of taco rice is one of ingenuity and resilience. A story so emblematic of Okinawa's own evolution that it has become one of the prefecture's most beloved and iconic dishes.
Born from necessity and invention just outside of one of the island's many US military bases, taco rice is a testament to Okinawa's knack for taking foreign influences and making them their own. During the post-war years, American troops stationed in Okinawa craved the familiar taste of home, especially after a night of drinking at local bars.
So the founder of King Tacos, Matsuzo Gubo, started experimenting. He'd been introduced to crunchy tacos by American servicemen, but he felt they needed to be more substantial, especially after a night on the town. So he jettisoned the tortilla and replaced it with rice. And then you get a layer of spiced pork and beef, shredded lettuce, cheese, tomato, and this wonderful, sweet, spicy salsa. And you can find it all over Okinawa in all kinds of riffs and variations. Hell, I even make it at home. My kids love it. but how wonderful that we get to experience it in the place where it was, for all intents and purposes, invented. That's true. Well, that sauce has got some poke to it. This is absolutely the best post-beer food, or pre-beer food, or during beer food.
Okinawa is littered with the uneasy residue of the US post-war occupation, past and present. But, like we've seen, while they may not offset the obvious imbalance they bring to the island, the influences don't always need to be negative. Orion Breweries was established in the shadow of the occupation and bucked the trend of German-influenced brewing in favor of US style. Today, it is by far the most popular beer brand in the prefecture.
I wouldn't exactly call myself a beer connoisseur, but I do have a great deal of affection for Orion. I mean, how can you not love this? It's brewed to complement the environment in which it's consumed, so subtropical Okinawa. It's perfect for hot days, but also knowing what people eat and what's produced and consumed here food-wise, so it's perfect for this environment. And coming on this tour and understanding the process used to create it and the science and the art makes me appreciate it even more, especially knowing that every single drop of this beer, no matter where in the world you are, is made right here using local water and local ingredients. I'm told that if you drink a can a day, it would take you 1,500 years to get through that. Challenge accepted. All of that coming together, and it's what's one of my favorite beers in the world. Oh God, that's good.
The Kurama Islands sit 20 miles southwest of Naha. The hour-long ferry journey gives you an opportunity to take in the stunning, if sometimes rolling, views of the region's famous blue waters, where flying fish can be spotted gliding above the wake of the Queen Zamami ferry as she whisks you towards her island namesake. But as brief as the journey is, the contrast between your port of origin and your destination is stark. They feel like different worlds, maybe even different times. 28 islands, only 4 of which are inhabited, connected by a filigree of coral reefs. The Kurama archipelago is a welcome contrast to the heat and friction you might feel in Naha. Zamami, the northernmost island, offers the first flicker of that Okinawa promise you were lured here by. Long stretches of sandy white beaches that would not feel out of place in the South Pacific. Small villages with a bucolic, laid-back feel, and warm, cerulean waters that teem with life. And there is no better way to experience that than by donning a snorkel or scuba tank and diving in. As the slow evening ferry quietly carries you back to Naha, it gives you a moment to contemplate where you've been and where you're returning to. Zamami offers a glimpse of the paradise Okinawa represents, a worthy and necessary counterweight to the urban tension of Naha. But as the ferry edges ever closer to its home port, the picture of Okinawa still feels incomplete. There has to be something more, somewhere that ties it all together and exemplifies the spirit of Ryukyu. And there is. At the very tip of the Ryukyu archipelago, 2,000 kilometers away from the neon chaos of Tokyo, there is a speck of paradise adrift in the East China Sea, a place where the entire promise finally comes together. It's Japan, yes, but not the Japan of bullet trains and salarymen. It's something deeper, more elemental. It's mountainous, green, and calm. The air smells of salt water and sugarcane. The people are relaxed, disarmingly informal, and almost universally happy. life here moves at the slow, deliberate pace of the tides. This is Ishigaki, my favorite place on Earth. For this paradise of volcano and coral, hemmed by some of the most beautiful water in the world, I can only begin my love letter on a beach. And not just any beach.
This is, without exaggeration, one of my favorite places on Earth. I discovered it by accident, Sakuji Beach. It's a small, shallow coral bay, shallow to the point where during low tide, you can walk out for hundreds and hundreds of meters and still be in ankle-deep water. It's peaceful, the water's warm, but one of the most extraordinary things about Ishigaki beaches, and actually all of the Yaeyama Islands, which is the archipelago Ishigaki is part of, is the sand. Stay with me, sand is a lot more interesting than it sounds. A lot of sand that we're used to is rocks that have been ground down by attrition over millions of years. This stuff, take a look, it's all, or almost all, organic. So it's coral, it's mollusks, it's the exoskeleton of sea creatures that have all been, again, ground down over millions and millions of years. And as you get closer to the water, it becomes finer and finer. And on some of the other islands, those sea creatures, their shells were all star-shaped, and they again have been ground down, but it means that all the sand is star-shaped. So one of the few places on Earth where you can quite literally hold the stars in your hand. There's an implication, of course, that if the sand is made of life, then the sea must be full of life, and it is. Some of the most beautiful and spectacular life you will ever see. However, there are one or two creatures that would rather prefer you were not in their home, and a list of those creatures can usually be found at the entrance to every beach. A list my children charmingly refer to as the menu of death. Stonefish, lionfish, blue-ring octopus, habu jellyfish, or a type of box jellyfish, would all rather prefer you weren't here and will let you know in a rather painful way. However, a lot of the beaches will have erected nets to keep those creatures out and you kind of safe. But if you are out here, outside of the nets, you wear the fancy shoe wear that I'm wearing, look in front of you, and respect the life that was here long before you were.
Thankfully, on dry land, we remain top of the food chain, and there are plenty of local Yaeyama delicacies to experience, like soba. But, as with everything else Okinawan, there's twist upon twist.
Yaeyama soba noodles. Now everybody knows that word soba, but these are a completely different beast. Traditional soba noodles are made with buckwheat, but these are made with wheat. So they have a totally different texture, more mochi-mochi as we learned at Fujinomiya, so a different mouthfeel, almost more al dente, if you will. The broth is made with skipjack tuna, pork bone broth, and kombu, or seaweed, and it's topped with either slow-cooked or braised pork belly, fish cake, green onions, red ginger. Sometimes you can put on Ishigaki chili. It's absolutely delicious, no matter how hot or cold it is outside. If you're looking for another Hawaiian similarity, if you had saimin in Hawaii, this will be very, very familiar to you, and they have a shared provenance. Cantonese-speaking Chinese migrants who went to Hawaii to work in the plantations created saimin. And remember, we're only 125 miles from Taiwan, so the influence in Ishigaki is obvious as well. But you can't come to this. Yaeyama, just a very small archipelago of islands, has its own distinct ramen, to use a broad category, and you must experience. These are absolutely delicious. The noodles are like nothing. I'm actually, my mouth is watering. I just want to tuck into it. It's so great. Greg's favorite thing in the world is hearing me chew through the microphone.
When we think of Japanese beef, two words come to mind. The first is Wagyu, that mystical word that usually means you're paying too much for your burger in a mid-range Las Vegas eatery. But let's clear something up right now. The name for all Japanese beef cattle is Wagyu. It means, quite literally, Japanese cow. The other word is Kobe, synonymous with the ultra-marbled, ultra-expensive, ultra-delicious beef from the Kobe region. But let me introduce you to a beef that perhaps you've never heard of, but possesses all of the quality of the revered Kobe beef, Ishigaki beef.
All Japanese beef, including Ishigaki beef, is characterized by the amount of marbling it has. That's the intramuscular fat, or the fat between the meat. We've kind of been conditioned in the West to be afraid of fat in beef, but that's what makes Ishigaki beef so delicious. Now in the West, we tend to eat beef that has around 5 to 15% fat, but for Ishigaki beef to be considered high quality, it has to have a minimum of 25% fat. Now the magical thing about Ishigaki beef is that its fat melts at a much lower temperature. So when you put it in your mouth, it doesn't feel fatty, it doesn't taste fatty. It's just tender and delicious and buttery and really like nothing you have ever experienced before. It's absolutely perfect.
Now, I don't eat a whole lot of beef anymore, but I feel okay eating this because A, it's delicious, and B, contrary to popular belief, the fat in Japanese cattle is actually monounsaturated fat, which has the effect of lowering bad cholesterol. So, rather incredibly, Ishigaki beef is good for you. So who are you to resist? Of course, there will be times when steaming hot noodles or sizzling beef are a little less appealing in the sweltering 33 degrees Celsius heat. And when that happens, there's always room for ice cream.
So Ishigaki cattle is not just prized for its meat, but also for its milk. Much like their brothers and sisters in Hokkaido, Ishigaki milk and cream is unbelievably creamy and revered and sought after. So when you're here, and time is ticking fairly obviously when you're in this kind of heat, this soft serve ice cream, which is made from local Ishigaki dairy milk, but also flavored with Ishigaki salt, which is harvested, for want of a better word, from the sea, and it's all different flavors, sweet and savory, and that lovely salty sweet goes together beautifully. I'm going to eat this because it's dripping, but absolutely delicious. Look at it. It's like a torrent at this point. If you're looking for something slightly less hyper-local, but still very, very regional, Blue Seal ice cream is some of the best ice cream I've ever had in my life. Incredibly, the brand was started by the US military in 1948 to boost morale around homesick servicemen and women at the end of World War II. What's lovely about Blue Seal is not only is it great ice cream, but it has really amazing local flavors. So Okinawan sea salt cookie, and if you're here, you must try those. They're absolutely delicious. They're kind of like a shortbread. And then Okinawan brown sugar. Okinawan brown sugar is only grown on 8 remote islands, including Ishigaki, and each island produces a slightly different taste of brown sugar. And the way that they produce it means that the glycemic index spike you get in your body is much less than hyper-processed brown sugar that we get at home. So let's say it's good for you. At least that way we can justify eating tubs and tubs of this glorious stuff.
As you spend time here, you quickly realize something. Ishigaki isn't just a bohemian snorkeler's paradise or a pit stop on some ghastly cruise. It's a community with a hard-working agricultural backbone, a bustling commercial port, the output of which can be experienced in restaurants and izakayas all over Japan, and a resident population who are going about their jobs, their education, and their responsibilities just like the rest of us. The stark and remarkable difference between them and us, however, is people here in Ishigaki seem to have perfected that mythical balance of work and play. The pace of the island ebbs and flows with a truly unique rhythm that transcends the entire day. It's here that the promise of Okinawa finally comes to fruition. Ishigaki is a place where you can slow down, take a breath, and maybe, just maybe, find a piece of yourself that's been missing. Just like I did.
I've wanted to tell you about this place for a long, long time. And at the same time, I've not wanted to tell you, or frankly anyone about it, ever. The first time I came to Ishigaki, I felt like I was being let in on the world's best kept secret. A tropical, lush, green island surrounded by warm waters that are teeming with life, a community full of friendly, warm, welcoming people, and some of the best food I've ever had in my life. It sounds like fantasy, but I came back time and time again, and the sheen never wore off, and the magic somehow got stronger and stronger. So now you do know about it. The secret is out of the bag. And now that it is, I hope that you will come to Ishigaki and experience this absolutely magical place.
A huge thank you to fixer, translator, drone pilot extraordinaire, and dear friend Joseph Tame, without whom this episode could not have happened.